Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the JTC 27 webinar on webinars, hosted by WMIA, WNMA's Joint Technology Committee. Today we'll have a lot of people hosting. We've got Jeff Onsrud of Sierra Onsrud, myself, James Scarlett of Scarlett Inc., Jason Dingus of Quist Machinery, David Biggs of Woodworking Network, Sam Devine of WMA, and Larry Hoffer of WMIA. Guys, my thing isn't letting me go backwards. Sorry about that, everybody. There we go. All right. So what we'll cover today is what's the difference between a webinar and a meeting. And so in short, webinars like you're presenting to a classroom or auditorium of people. You have a panelist group, and basically they're the main people that are talking. Everybody else is for the most part muted and has to either chat in questions or ask questions. Speaking of which, for that you'll find at the bottom of your screen here in Zoom, there's a button that says Q&A. If you click on that, you'll be able to send a chat message either to everyone or to specific people. So if you want to go ahead and ask your questions in there as we go, then at the end we'll field all those questions. Then you also have things that are considered more meetings, and this is kind of your typical Zoom meeting or Google Hangout or GoToMeeting that you probably attended, which is more of like a, think of it as a conference table. This is people inside your company or inside a closed group. Everybody's essentially on equal talking and sharing rights, and it's kind of like having a conference just virtually. Next, we'll go over things like screen sharing versus video sharing. So right now you can see my screen, which is this slide deck, but you can also see in the corner video sharing, which is myself. And it's important to know that your video is being shared and or your screen is being shared. So you don't want to be showing your screen if you think you're not showing your screen. And likewise with the video, you don't want to be getting one of these funny angles or things like that while you're trying to have a video conference that can be distracting. We'll talk about remote control. What that means basically is that we're going to take keyboard and mouse. And so in a typical video sharing or screen sharing session, keyboard and mouse isn't necessarily needed. It's just showing what's on somebody's screen, but sometimes you need to remotely assist somebody or show somebody how to do something. So some of these programs have the option of having a remote control feature that allows taking over keyboard and mouse control. We'll talk a little bit about privacy. So some of these products have been in the news lately about certain privacy things. A lot of those things are changing and reacting, especially as more and more people are using these softwares. New security concerns are popping up, and so it is something to be aware of. Things like turning off your notifications when you're presenting. So I've turned off my notifications so I don't have little pop-ups that pop up saying, hey, new email from Joe, new email from Cindy, and in a subject line or something like that. When you're sharing your screen, make sure you know what you're sharing. You can share your entire screen. You can share just part of your screen. You can share a certain program only, or certain window, certain section of Windows. There's all sorts of little buttons for that, so be aware of what you are sharing when you're sharing it. And also, if you have multiple monitors, make sure you're sharing the right monitor. Then we're going to go over things like Google Hangouts, Zoom, and GoToMeeting in depth. We'll go over just some broad-based what some of the other softwares are that are out there to consider, which all have their features and benefits, and we'll close it up with some Q&A. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to James, and don't forget, wear pants when you're on a video conference.
Thanks, Jeff. All right, I'm going to do a Jeff, it's telling me I can't share my screen while you're sharing. So if you could turn that, there you go, perfect. See all of our smiling faces. All right. And so now I'm going to share my screen. So what you guys are looking at is basically my web browser. So we use Google. We're very Googly in general. And that's kind of what's forced us into using all the different pieces of Google. But there is a difference between the free version and the paid version. So I'm going to show you guys. Most likely you all fit in this middle category, 12 bucks per user per month. It's pretty simple. What we really like about using Google and meeting with Google is that they're all tied together. So I jump into my email and the Google Calendar is tied to the email. And then if you go in and look at your actual calendar, you can see all the people that are invited to a meeting. For instance, every morning we have our whole team get together and do a meeting every single morning via Google Meet. Now there's also some differences too with Hangouts versus Meet. So Hangout is just basically a text message, a conversation back and forth between a few people. So like right now I've got a chat going with Ryan and Carl. Now if I wanted to video call, I could really only video call, I think, with one person at a time when I'm using Hangouts. So a lot of times we use Meet for the larger meetings. And so what I'm gonna actually do right now is do a meeting inside of a meeting. So we're gonna do a Google meeting while we're on a Zoom meeting. And I know there's probably a lot of people that frown upon that, but I think there's actually a couple of our team members that are already in the call. Yep, there's our team. So say hi, everybody. Thanks, guys. So we do this on a pretty regular basis, and everyone can kind of chime in from wherever they are. So, and then this is the same features down here. So if you're in Google, you can turn your microphone on and off. You can turn your camera on and off, and present your screen just like I did on the Zoom meeting. So, thanks, guys. And in a nutshell, that is that's Google Meet. My helpful tip is to mute yourself when you're not talking. You never know when the UPS guy's coming to the door to deliver that Amazon package and the dogs go nuts. So.
Looks like you're gonna have to release it again, James. Hey guys, I'm Jason Dingus with Quiz, and can I get a thumbs up, making sure you guys can hear me, everything? Just not any feedback here. All right, good. Yeah, the big advantage I like to Google Hangout, as James was talking about, is that most of you already have it because you're paying for a lot of us are already paying for some level of Google. About a year ago, Quiz Machinery decided to go ahead and invest in Zoom, just as a separate, a little bit more formal at the time, a little bit more features. And we've been with Zoom for about a year. We've been happy. We're using the Pro version, which you can see here. Costs us about 15 bucks a month for just the one. We just have one user ID. The difference when you go up from free to Pro is going to be you have a regular user ID. You have more meeting time. Like the free version of Zoom only allows you for about 40 minutes of a meeting. The Pro gets you a 24 meeting duration limit, and those are some of the just control, more cloud space, so you can keep the meetings on the cloud, or you can obviously record it to your computer as well. Then once you go up to the business, you're looking at more participants is obviously a big thing, more space, more control, more. One of the functions, and I couldn't figure out whether it was on my level or not. You can break Zoom down into smaller groups. So if you're in a webinar type setting and you want everybody to go talk about some different topics in smaller group settings, just like you would in a classroom, you can do that with Zoom. And I couldn't figure out what level that gets you to, but that's there as well. Some of the features we like the most, we have a personal meeting ID that we can use every time. We have a lot of, just like most of these, we have an interactive collaboration. We can, James, if he wanted to, could mark onto my presentation right now, onto my screen. He could also request remote control access to my computer, and he could do everything from turn off this presentation to check my email. Then there's also the shared screen, obviously, is something that they all have as well. Admin control, we like, that's one of the features we like, is just being able to control who's in and who's not. And then obviously we like the small breakout groups. And then there's James there. I'm assuming that's James. He's the funny one. And then group and private chats. Just past Tuesday, I got kind of tired of texting back and forth with everybody. I said, look, I'm just going to get on Zoom in our meeting room, get on there. If you want to ask me a question, get back off when we're done answering it. And I just stayed on the meeting room, and it just felt like we were sitting in an office setting and people could walk into your office and ask you the question they wanted to ask. It's kind of nice. Just to kind of go a little bit deeper into what James was getting into, Zoom does distinguish between what a meeting is and a webinar. It is more money, costs about $40 extra for the host and to be able to put on webinars. You get a lot more control. If you're interested in that, this icon, this picture right here, when you get this presentation, you can click on that and it'll take you into this graph that will break down for you on Zoom's website what the difference is between a Zoom meeting and a Zoom webinar, and what you're getting for that extra $40. We just never felt like it was worth it for us. I'm going to start this YouTube video. You guys can watch this. Hopefully you can see what it's like to show a video on YouTube.
Welcome, and this is how you join a Zoom meeting. Here you go to Zoom.us, and if you already have a link, you can click that, or you can go to join a meeting. Here you type in your meeting ID, hit join. And the window will pop up, and you click join meeting. Turn on computer audio unless you're calling in. Allow you in the meeting. Here you can decide to mute yourself by clicking on the mute button, and that will stay there on the button to let you know that you're not recording your voice. This should be done every time you join the meeting unless you plan on speaking all the time. So undo that, and you just click it, and then you can see that the file is open.
Jason, if we're supposed to hear the audio, we can't hear it very well.
So this link will be in the presentation when you pause. That link will be in the presentation when you get it. You can follow that for yourself. But also, I also wanted to show that because I wanted to show that you can show videos and what happens. It's not always fluid. It's going to depend a lot on your web speed, your Wi-Fi speed, and what you have open, and just there's different factors that could go into that. And we could talk to you more about that if you have questions or concerns. I'm sure Zoom has some explanations as to what will go faster. Couple advanced techniques that you can do with Zoom that are pretty neat. One is you can change your background. As you see right now, we're using Zoom for this meeting. James and David both have their background changed. I'm assuming you guys can see that. Jeff had his as well. I have not changed mine, but I do use this white wall for it. Initially I thought that it was only for iPads. Turns out you can do it with a PC as well. You go down to your video button, you click that arrow, and then you'll see choose virtual background. It'll give you a choice. One thing is it is looking with a PC specifically. I know for sure it's looking for that white background to put the background up. So just pay attention to that, to what you're wearing, and whether there's light flashing on your face, you'll go away. Another cool trick I just learned yesterday, I haven't even tried it yet, is closed caption. So as I'm talking, the text would be appearing at the bottom of the video. I have not tried that yet. And then there's some more advanced stuff here. So when you're ready for that, give it a shot. We quizzed, that was Allie on that previous message. Allie works for Quiz Machinery. She did an advanced one for people to talk about how to annotate and take remote control and stuff like that. Something that's been in the news a lot recently is the Zoom privacy settings. I'm sure this is probably going to be a concern with all of them, especially the small ones. GoToMeeting that Dave will talk about in a second, has been around a long time. that's probably helping them. But the Zoom, people didn't really follow it too much, and now that it's had a 500% increase in users, you're seeing a lot more people taking notice to it. What the big issue about is what data is being shared with Facebook and what's not. According to Zoom, and I just got an update today, they're not doing that anymore. These articles on here, you can follow these and read more about them if you want. I think Zoom's trying to take care of it, but it was kind of one of those, this is the situation we're in today, and we need to, they're having to learn on the fly here. But so far as a user of Zoom, I've been happy with their response, and I haven't had any Zoom bombs, but there's ways to prevent that as well. So just read up on that. This was my Zoom update I just got today. I captured it while it was updating. I'm assuming that's some of that privacy stuff that's going on now. And then my helpful hint for you is don't eat kale before the meeting. And then be aware of the nostril view. Just try to get that view from the top. You'll get a much better angle of yourself. David, I'm going to stop sharing.
All right, thank you, Jason. And again, I'm David Biggs from Woodworking Network. I just wanted to mention one more time that if you had any specific questions about any of these platforms, Google Meets, Google Hangouts, Zoom, GoToMeeting, just go down to the bottom of your screen where it says Q&A and type in your question there, and we'll be happy to handle it. In just a moment when we wrap up, we'll have a little bit of a Q&A session if there are some questions available. I have taken time from the job site today, as you guys can see, to join you here, just to talk a little bit about GoToMeeting, because Woodworking Network has been using this particular platform for 3 or 4 years now. So I am pretty familiar with it and a lot of the new features. Just for a moment, I wanted to go over the fact that this particular platform is back from 2004, where it was created by Citrix. And it was only recently acquired 4 years ago by LogMeIn for $1.8 billion. Right after that, in 2017, they did a whole security and compliance review. Jason mentioned that Zoom was having some issues recently, and I'm sure they'll get over them shortly. But one of the advantages of using a more established platform is that they do have a lot of this stuff locked down for the most part. So later in the presentation, and when you get a copy of it, you can access the white paper on the security that GoToMeeting has done and will do going forward. 2019 brought us a whole redesigned user interface, and you can see some of that in the bottom left of your screen here, where it's bringing the interface much more in line with the more modern applications like Zoom and BlueJeans and some of the other ones, which is nice. Just very briefly, starting off at a professional and business tier, right now there's a discount, $12 a month for professional, and business is $16. Of course, you only need one account to be able to host a meeting, but depending on the nature of your business, if you have a lot of salespeople that are going to be doing individual calls, you don't want to step on each other's toes, so you probably want more than one organizer. And that's pretty much the same for all these platforms. Jason just went over Zoom, for example. If you have 10 people that need to have a license because they all need to have their own individual meeting rooms, then you're going to have to pay for 10 licenses for the application. We have a custom plan with them, and they work pretty well with companies such as ours to be able to include things like GoToWebinar, which, again, similar to Zoom, is broken out as a separate product. So it would normally cost $20 a month per license in addition to whatever the regular GoToMeeting cost is. But they bake in some discounts for custom plans if you talk with them. Some of the features that I really like about GoToMeeting are also the same as the other platforms like personal meeting rooms, where you don't have to continually have a new URL over and over to schedule. You can simply have one. For example, my personal meeting room is gotomeet.me/WWN. So if I share that with people, I can simply share that same URL every time I want to start up a meeting. You can do recurring meetings that automatically send out new invitations every week or every day or every month. And GoToMeeting has a really well planned out ecosystem as far as the way that they do their applications. So there's an app available on all the mobile platforms, on Linux, on Mac, on PC, and the one-click web app, which is similar to Zoom. If somebody just clicks from a web browser, they can go right into a meeting without having to download any specific desktop software. Some key features that GoToMeeting has that I'm not sure the other ones do that that you want to take advantage of if you are interested in using this software. One of them is meeting transcription, where you can turn this feature on. It's a part of all GoToMeeting plans currently. And while you're doing your conversations, it will go ahead and write down all of the notes, well, everything that everyone says, and put it into a document that's archivable and searchable later. So you can search for a keyword if you want to find something that happened in a certain conversation, etc. Recording and drawing tools are also, you find them on most of these platforms as well. So I didn't want to overlap too much, but it's important to note that drawing and spotlighting tools are very important in these kinds of conversations where, for example, as in this picture, you have a graph that you're displaying and you want to highlight one particular part of that. If you're in a physical meeting room, it's very easy to point at the screen. But in the spaces that we are doing business in now, it's not as easy to do so. So that's a really great point. Recording the conversations and video is also fantastic. And GoToMeeting has a really nice ability to record all those conversations and archive them in one place. GoToWebinar is the additional package that you can get on top of GoToMeeting. Just like this is a Zoom webinar, GoToWebinar will provide a whole host of features specifically for these really large conversations where we're directing this presentation towards an audience rather than more of a sitting around the table conversation, like Jeff mentioned at the beginning of our meeting today. For example, Woodworking Network next week is hosting a webinar to discuss the survey results that we did for COVID-19 wood industry impact. And we do that all through GoToWebinar, and we can have, with our current package, up to 500 attendees. So you can play videos, you can interact with the audience, you can give handouts out, you can put polls out there live during the webinars, and you can submit surveys afterwards to get all that information that you want from your attendees. I'm not going to go over these for obvious reasons, but when you have the handout, here are some resources that you could go to see how to start a meeting, what the interface looks like, scheduling and hosting, and as I mentioned earlier, the security white paper that has all the details that you may want to see if you're interested in looking at those specifics. Tips from me, don't multitask during video meetings, different from a meeting that's just audio. Everyone can see you, right? So if you're on your phone, if you're writing an email, if you're eating lunch, everybody can see what you're doing, and that takes everyone out of the meeting. And it's good specifically for a video meeting for everyone to pay attention and be looking at each other and keeping eye contact, as it were. Splitting the roles between attendees is a good tip from me. If you have someone being a note keeper, if you have someone who's facilitating the timing of the meeting and saying, this is going too long, or let's spend some more time on this. If you ask everyone individually what their opinions are on a certain subject, it's too often that we start a meeting and we don't think about all the other people involved because we want to get our point across. Well, it's important to allow other people time to speak as well. And one tip from my coworker, Will Sampson, is showing up to a meeting 5 minutes early is on time. Showing up to a meeting on time is late. I wanted to go over other software. WebEx, Skype, and Free Conference are all software packages that are free or have free packages that you can use right now. They're not necessarily as refined or as reliable or as security conscious as our solutions that we discussed today are, but they're available right now for you to try out and use if you want to wade into the pool. BlueJeans is a newer video conferencing software package that's used by big companies like Facebook. Join.me is another package that is owned by LogMeIn, which is the same company that owns GoToMeeting. Used to have a free package, they've eliminated that. So both of those are paid solutions that will all show up on your top 10 video conferencing searches when you look in Google, and all options that you should consider if you have not yet settled on a solution. But I will say that the solutions that we went over today, being Google Hangouts and Zoom and GoToMeeting, really stand out to me as the most viable and reliable options that exist right now. I'm going to go ahead and hand the conversation back to Jeff. And if you have any questions out there, please let us know what those might be.
So we've got one question so far, so hopefully a few others will come in here while I'm reading this one, but I'm going to throw it out to the group and maybe get everybody to chime in. Has anyone used any of these platforms for live machine demos from your showroom? If so, which platform do you think works best? Anybody? So I'll go ahead and jump in then until somebody else has a response. We've used several different ones, and I would say really it depends on what you're after. So a lot of times where it's one or a couple of people, it's really easy to spin up something like Google Hangouts Meet. It's right inside a calendar, so we've used that, and you can pull it up on your phone, your computer, so people in the office, the remote people can pull it up on their computers. The people that are doing the video demo can pull it up on their phone and walk around the machine and really kind of show close up stuff. Kind of similar to as if you use Skype or one of these other solutions, but Zoom works just the same. So they really, for that type of purpose, any of them that you can share, as long as there's a phone app and a desktop app, really work pretty well for a machine demo.
We also have a question about whether considering the free versions out there, why pay for the for the upgraded version? The answer to that, Dave, is control over features and functionalities. Most of the free ones will work great if you're trying to do a Skype call with your family member who you can't go see because you're in quarantine, or your FaceTime's wonderful for that feature, and it could obviously work if you're trying to show somebody a feature on a machine or have a tech issue. A lot of my customers do use FaceTime for that very reason, and Skype, or the free versions of these apps, depending on what the manufacturer is using. But when you want to get into a presentation, you want to have control of your privacy, might be part of it. What are you giving up for that free? Very little is free in this world, and I'm always curious as to what I'm giving them information-wise, privacy-wise, for that free to use that software. So I guess that would be my primary concern.
Yeah, the regular version of Skype also, I believe, is held to 25 people at once, which may not be a concern for smaller groups, but certainly for larger conversations. And in our experience, because Woodworking Network used to use Skype as what we communicated with, it is not as reliable. It tends to go down more often and doesn't have as good video quality as the solutions we use now. Not to mention all the other features that we discussed that are very specific to these platforms.
And Dave, one other thing, whatever you do use, yesterday we did a dry run on this and we learned a lot just doing this. And some of us have been using Zoom for years. So I think whatever you choose to do, if you're going to do it with a customer, do it with one of your sales reps first, and try it with them first. Try a run through, try showing them your car, whatever you can do to try and try it out first, because that's where you're going to learn. That's where you're going to, hit your shin. So
definitely recommend doing the dry runs. I'm going to echo that. But I also recommend try the free one, the free Skype or Zoom or GoToMeeting, the free tier, and that lets you dip your feet in, get to understand it. But like they said, there's various restrictions. Sometimes it's the length of the call. Sometimes it's the number of participants. They all have their list. And if you just look on the free versus the next level up, you can usually discern that. But try the free version first. Make sure you like it before you buy it. Also, most of these are month to month, so if you don't like it, the risk is relatively low. You're out $15, $20. So another question that was asked is, and I'm going to throw this out to the group. You mentioned, I scrolled. I might have missed this part, but pros and cons of Microsoft Teams. I believe Microsoft Teams is built on Skype. Does anybody have any feedback on that?
So
I'm pretty sure that's.
we
Sorry,
haven't
go ahead, David.
specifically used it, but I think that their Microsoft Teams is being put out there to take over from Skype, and they're going to be phasing Skype out in the next couple of years. But because that's more of a giant overarching productivity and communications package, you kind of have to be all in, I would think, with Microsoft Teams. So I can't speak to it directly. It certainly is a solution that you could use, especially if you're looking for something to take over all of that communications, because things like GoToMeeting are just for meetings, not also to assign tasks and split things into communications groups, et cetera.
So another question that was asked, which I think might just be a clarification, can any of these do small groups, like if I were actually sitting in a classroom? And I'm going to start that off with, that's kind of what we were saying is the difference between a webinar and a meeting, and most of these have two levels, webinar and meeting. And so a meeting is considered the small group where everybody kind of can talk and you're not on mute and don't have to chat. And this is considered a webinar where we're more of a panelist and we have, call it more authority rights than the rest of the people in the meeting. Anybody else want to add on to that?
Yeah, I think that's spot on, Jeff. Like, for instance, we do the Google Meet, and as you can see on my screen, it was tiled up with 4 people, and the more people you add to it, the smaller the tiles get. But I've even had the kids start using it too for their virtual classrooms. So they're talking to all their classmates, and it's all tiled around.
And so it might have been a little less obvious because the audio was hard because we were in a meeting inside of a meeting, but everybody in that meeting could talk anytime they wanted.
And to also further that, the small groups, Zoom does have the capability to take, say you have a classroom of 10, you can break them into groups of 3 or 4 or whatever you want to do into smaller groups, and so that only those 3 or 4 can talk to each other, and the other, they won't interrupt the other 3 or 4. So you can do that with Zoom for sure, have smaller breakdown groups.
Yeah, and that's becoming a more popular thing. It's what they call breakout sessions, and you can either pre-assign or on the fly assign people to those groups. Another question that came in is, do you use special cameras for machine demos, or do you find laptop camera good enough? What about sound? I'll jump in again since I started that one. Anybody can tack on. It really just depends on what your phone is and what that camera is. A lot of phones these days have a very good camera on them, especially the rear camera. And so that's definitely the easiest, but certainly you can plug in an external camera into any sort of computer and use that. It's just in your settings where you say what your video source is. And so if you prefer an external webcam, that's fine. Same thing with the mic. Sound can definitely be a challenge, especially in a manufacturing environment. So an external microphone that you either plug into your phone or computer or whatever your device is recommended in lots of cases to make sure sound works. But headphones these days, the noise canceling is pretty good, and lots of times you can get away with just using headphones.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing right now. And a lot of times I'll have somebody else hold the camera for me. So as I'm walking around a machine, I've got the audio in my ears, and then somebody else is running the camera, and it works pretty good.
You know, I agree, and I think the cameras are great, especially on the new iPhone and Android devices, to the point where you don't really need some kind of prosumer or professional equipment in most cases. You just need good lighting, and I would definitely recommend a good microphone or some other way to record audio better than what's built in. And you can look for those things, you know, just on Amazon or at Best Buy. They have them available. Maybe it's a topic that we could get into sometime down the road too, specific kinds of tech for those purposes.
Also, one other pro tip is we're coming up on summer, and it's a great time to do this. Quiz Machinery just hired an intern that'll start, fingers crossed, in mid-May. And he's, in college, he's at Appalachian State, and he knows how to use Excel, he knows how to use all this stuff. Coming up on intern season, hire yourself an intern. They can help you set up a lot of this stuff, teach it to you, because it's natural to these guys, these kids coming out now. And I say kids, but they're young adults now. They know this stuff. I thought I knew Excel till I hired my first intern, and he was cranking through stuff that took me an hour in literally 4 minutes. And so talking about adding other cameras and assessing this stuff, this is a perfect time to hire an intern as soon as they can start, obviously, with the quarantine.
They can start virtually.
Yeah, good point.
The world's
So
flat.
I've got another question unless anybody's got anything to add. And also wanted to echo David's point about lighting. Lighting is important, as you can maybe see mine's a little bit dark. I probably could use a little more light, and especially if you're going to be showing it to a customer, lighting something that's often forgotten. So thank you for that. Next question. You mentioned security issues with Zoom. Is that an issue with other platforms too?
Since we've been
I'll let you
using
field statement.
GoToMeeting, I haven't had any security bulletins come across my desk or anything like that, but I know that it has happened previously, which is one of the reasons why GoToMeeting addressed it in 2017 by upgrading their security. In that same vein, and I can have James talk about this, but I haven't really seen anything recently about Google Meet security concerns, but I'm positive if you go back far enough, there'll be something about it, right?
So
Always
just
is.
to take that a broader statement, the way that most of these things work is they generate a, whatever company / crazy unique long address. And so those are, hard to guess, but not impossible. A lot of the Zoom stuff that you're hearing is because people are first-time movers to GoToMeeting, Zoom, web conferencing, and so what they're doing is they're posting out on social media, hey, attend my session. Well, if you put it on Twitter, let's say, that's open public. And so people find those links, they just search, with special characters that says, give me everything that has a Zoom link, essentially. And okay, now I found all these public links, and I just click on them until I find one that's open. So what's happening is just the default security preferences. It's not that Zoom is inherently insecure in many cases, it's that the default settings aren't necessarily defaulting to secure. So I was just reading yesterday that actually Zoom has suspended all of their new development and focused 100% of their engineering on securing up the platform because they're getting a lot of bad publicity. The one thing that I recall that was mostly a security thing was the whole sending data to Facebook and LinkedIn and some of that stuff. And I think that was probably they were trying to add a feature, an enhancement that made it easier to do certain things. And part of the terms and conditions of using platforms like LinkedIn and Facebook are basically, well, we get access to the data for our ad platform. And either they didn't look or didn't care, and so then that's why they went back and decided to turn those things off, because the value to the consumer versus the privacy concern didn't balance out.
And as you had mentioned before, Jeff, the option to have a password, for example, on one of these meeting rooms is helpful as well, because even if you do have a public URL, at that point, you'd still need to pass another obstacle in order to get to where you're trying to go.
Great point. Two-factor authentication or something, the email can say, here's the passcode, change that passcode so somebody can't re-attend the meeting after they're out. Great idea. That's the last question we have listed. I'll give it another minute in case anybody's got a last-minute question that wants to pop in before we hang up.
While we're doing that, while we're waiting that minute, I will go ahead and say thank you so much to Larry and Samantha, our representatives from the WMIA and WMMA, for their help in putting this together and their suggestion in us doing this. We, the Joint Tech Committee, who all the panelists you've seen today are members of, and there's another 10 people who help with this who you don't see are also members of the Joint Tech Committee. We're always looking for more people, and we appreciate your help. But most importantly, right now, what we need are your suggestions on topics that you guys want to hear. Something like this that's pertinent to what you're going through right in the moment, or maybe something you're thinking of down the road. Please give us some meat that we can go chew on, and we would like some suggestions. So after this, we're going to get a survey going, I believe. Correct? We're going to send out a survey after this. It's not built into the webinar, such as the way that would be with GoToMeeting, like our last one. But this one is it's going to come out as a Survey Monkey. Is that right?
Yeah,
Larry?
it's going to come out from Larry Hopper, an email to everybody that registered probably within the next 15 to 20 minutes.
Yeah, and we'd really appreciate your responses when you start leading these webinars. I promise you, you're going to the karma of filling out our survey is going to come back to haunt you. So, and my office manager would be remiss, would be texting me probably right now to tell me you can look at Jeff Onsard and you can see the importance of good lighting, and as well as Larry Hoffer, you can see the value of having good lighting on these when you're leading a meeting. So so definitely pay attention to that too. Any other questions, Jeff? We good?
Oh, wait, one more just popped in, 1 second. Somebody said, FYI, if you're gonna buy a new webcam, don't sleep on it. They're selling out fast, at least the good ones. Same thing can be said for secondary monitors and a lot of these things, because all of a sudden a lot of people are doing these extra meetings. So, yeah, your options might be a little limited.
That is one other pro tip too. You'll see on the list of attendees or presenters, you see my logo for my company, the Q there. That's actually another computer I have going. One of my computers has been on the fritz, and I want to have a backup just in case it went south. So I know another one I participate in on a weekly basis. He always has two. So just a thought there too. Thank you guys so much, and be safe out there, and take care of your family, take care of your companies, and let us know if we can help you in any way. Okay.
See you, everybody.